Hi there and welcome back to Explore Dark Side. It's Stephanie and I have a new book review for you. And today's book is very different to what I would usually read or what I would also usually review. But it's a book that I apparently have read twice already. I wasn't really aware that I read this already years ago until I came across my own Facebook memories. So where I recommended this book years and years ago. So as you can already see, it's not a book for me that really sticked with me. But when I went through one of the charity shops and had a little browse on a Saturday, I saw this book. And by the way, I think they're a great place to look for books, because I think, especially when we have like paper printed books like this one, it's nice to not get rid of books. I also give all of my books I no longer read or are no longer interested in having, or usually actually at the time I finish reading them, I give them away, and I give them to these charity shops. So when I give them away, I usually browse and see if there's any other books I like. Well, anyway, so I saw this book, and I was immediately like hooked. I was like, oh my god, this sounds really interesting. And then it came up to me that I already read it, and I read it again, and I think it's a beautiful book. However, I would like to give you a little disclaimer. So if you're currently in a period which like quite a dark period in your life, and I don't know if this would be the right book for you to read. So I tend to pick it up when I'm apparently in not the best times of my life, but also it's something that I found really comforting. So I guess it depends, but you can tell by the title whether this is something for you or not. So this book is Veronica Decides to Die by Paulo Coelho. I hope I pronounced his name right. Well, Veronica Decides to Die is the story about a girl called Veronica, apparently, who decides to die and tries to take her life. And apparently there is no proper reason for her to do so, except for she just wants to do it. And as you can probably tell, it goes wrong, and so she does not die. So she ends up in a mental hospital, and obviously it is a different time. It's not like it is now, but the whole story is about finding the beauty of life when we think there is only limited time left. And there's a few things that I really liked, and I barely ever do this, but I made like little, well, we call them Eselsohren in German, I don't know, like donkey ear. I don't know, I don't think you call them donkey ears in English. But yeah, I made a few of these mental notes where there were like moments in this book that I really liked. So one of these is where they talk about the bitterness, like what happens when we are bitter, what happens to us when the bitterness takes over, like what has happened to our desire. So I think this book, what I really liked about this book is it has a nice like background story, and I think it like nicely wraps up some really interesting concepts of life, some thoughts of life, some food for thought, like is that right or is that wrong, and is someone sick who is mentally maybe not feeling well? Should they get a label, etc.? So I think there's like some really interesting points in this book, which is, as I said, like nicely wrapped up in this story about Veronica and the other patients, etc. So yes, I really like this book. It's a very light read. Despite the topic, it's also not too thick. You can see it's rather thin, so it's not like a massive read. It's a book, I think, that it's just like a nice Sunday read, or maybe before you go to bed, etc. So one of the things that it actually says is, and I read it out from here: the thoughts will come back, but try to push them to one side. You have two choices: to control your mind or let your mind control you. You're already familiar with the latter experience, allowing yourself to be swept along by fears, neuroses, insecurities, for we all have self-destructive tendencies. Don't confuse madness with a loss of control. And I think this is a nice concept, because so many things we can take into our everyday lives. Like, I mean, this is like locus of control, the concept, right? Do we feel like a victim by what is happening, or do we take back control and can't maybe influence what is happening, but how we're going to react on this. I did a separate video on this, so if you're interested in this, just have a look on the channel. But yeah, so I think it's a really nice concept, nicely wrapped up in a story, as I said earlier, and it's some nice food for thought. Let me see if I find another one I really liked. Oh yeah, here's another one I liked. So Edward is her friend, and she says to him, it's quite far at the end. I feel like starting to live again, Edward. I feel like making the mistakes I always wanted to make but never had the courage to. Facing up to the feelings of panic that might well come back, but whose presence will merely weary me. Since I know I'm not going to die or faint because of them, I can make new friends and teach them how to be mad too in order to be wise. I will tell them not to follow the manual of good behavior, but to discover their own lives, desires, adventures, and to live. So this book is, if it is anything, I guess it's a manifesto to life, to really appreciate life and live it to the fullest. And I think this is also what I really like about this book. It's a topic that is obviously very sensitive, and it's a topic that is difficult to touch. And if you are struggling with suicidal thoughts, please get help. There's also an interview with Andrea Newton about this on the channel. Please do get help. But yeah, it's, as I said, like earlier, as a disclaimer, depending on where you are in your life, you might not consider reading this right now. But yeah, if you are like just looking for a read, I think it's a nice one. And yeah, this is the last bit I really like, that I would like to share with you. So it says, so let's turn to illness. Each human being is unique, each with their own qualities, instincts, forms of pleasure and desire for adventure. However, society always imposes on us a collective way of behaving, and people never stop to wonder why they should behave like that. They just accept it the way the typists accept the fact that the QWERTY keyboard was the best possible one. Have you ever met anyone in your entire life who asked why the hands of a clock should go in one particular direction and not in the other? So it's about raising questions of how we live, how we want to live our lives, and what changes we can do, because feeling helpless is one thing, but finding ways to get back in charge, to get back in control and find the pleasure. Yeah, so it's a read I really enjoyed, apparently twice. And yeah, I just wanted to introduce this book to you. If you have read it, I would be really curious to hear your thoughts on it, because I actually have never met anyone who has actually read it too. And I mean, apparently I have read it twice, once in German, once in English. And I liked it twice. So yeah, please do let me know. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts around it, and hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you very soon. Thank you, take care, and bye-bye.